Everyone. Welcome to the second Manitoba Sustainable Protein Research Symposium and the first breakout room we have for the day for the Agriculture presentation. So during the presentation session, you will hear from several trainees we have in the University of Manitoba and a couple of other neighboring universities related to the work that they are doing in terms of protein research. So I have a couple of announcements to make before we start the formal presentation. So please keep in mind that you will have 5 minutes to present. And when it comes to the 4-minute mark, I will switch on my camera and you will get the hint that you only have 1 minute to wrap up the presentation. At the same time, there will be a People's Choice Award for the best presenter as decided by the people who's attending this session. So the voting for that People's Choice Award will start sharp at 12 o'clock as soon as we finish the final presentation, and then it will close in 5 minutes. So please, all the participants, decide which presentation you like the best and vote for the presenter that you think should get the People's Choice Award. So the voting will run from 12 to 12:05, and then we will tally up the votes and then announce the winner. At the same time, everyone who's presenting here will have the opportunity to win one of the Scientific Merit Awards decided by an expert panel. So the Scientific Merit Award, we will have one award for the master's and undergraduate category and one award for the PhD category, PhD and postdoc category. That one will be announced a little bit later, but we will have the presentation award for the best Scientific Merit Award as well. Okay, so with that, we can start the first presentation. So our first presenter is Diana Elias. She's an undergraduate student from the University of Technology, Monterey, but right now she's doing a MyTax internship in Department of Food and Human Nutritional Science in my group. She will be presenting on the research that she's doing on effect of Pickering emulsion on material properties of canola protein-based films. Diana, you can share your presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Bandera. Could you help me sharing the screen for me, please?
Oh, sure.
No worries. Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Bandera, for that introduction. Okay.
Okay, you can start the presentation.
Thank you very much. As Dr. Bandera said, I am currently an undergraduate student in food engineering based in Mexico, and I will be coming to the University of Manitoba in July to work on the research project that I'm about to explain to you guys. I will be evaluating the effect of Pickering emulsions on material properties of canola protein films for the development of protein-based food packaging materials. Okay, so what is the problem behind the current food packaging materials? So far, we've used many different materials to contain and protect food products for their safe consumption and distribution all over the world. However, plastic packaging takes the lead role for that purpose because it is lightweight, durable, it is resistant, and above all, it is inexpensive. Nonetheless, plastic packaging is extremely wasteful and it negatively impacts the Earth's ecosystem. Because plastic isn't biodegradable, every piece of plastic ever made is still on this planet. Whether it breaks down into microplastics or not, they are still washed into the oceans and consumed by marine animals. So we can see how this is a problem for our environment. In recent years, there has been a growing need to replace petroleum-based plastics due to their non-renewability and their low biodegradability. And this is where alternative packaging with biopolymers, such as starch-based or protein-based packaging materials, have emerged as a solution. However, these materials tend to have poor mechanical properties, such as brittleness or poor tensile strength. Therefore, it is essential to develop methods to improve their mechanical properties. So the idea that we wanted to test out was the incorporation of Pickering emulsions to stabilize the protein matrix and improve its mechanical properties. Okay, so what's the game plan? As I mentioned before, I have not yet performed the experiment because I will do so from July to September under the MyTax research program. However, this is a methodology that I plan to follow. First of all, the experimental design consists of a one-way ANOVA with the Pickering emulsion concentration as a variable to be tested under 11 different levels. To create the protein-based film, I will extract the remaining protein as a byproduct of the canola meal that was previously used to create canola oil. Then I will be making a Pickering emulsion, which I must specify that differs from regular emulsions because one is made with solid particles encapsulating a liquid rather than using surfactants to encapsulate the liquid. And for this particular emulsion, I will use nanocrystal cellulose, as a capsule and oleic acid as the core. Once I have both the protein extraction and the emulsion, I will create the film via the casting method. And after the film is created, I will then evaluate its mechanical properties, its thermal properties, and its water barrier properties to see the potential it has as a food packaging material. Okay, so what am I expecting to find? Ideally, using a Pickering emulsion rather than a regular emulsion will confer greater stability to the protein matrix, and it will stop the phase separation from happening. This is meant to improve the thermal and water barriers properties of the entire film. And I wanted to add that a similar project was performed last year in Brazil, but in this case, they used a starch-rich film instead of a protein-rich film, but they also used nanocellulose stabilized Pickering emulsions. And they found that it did improve the thermal stability of the films because of the strong molecular interactions that were going on. However, those same interactions are very specific to the composition of the materials employed, and that is why it has to be tested for every different matrix. Could you change the next slide, please? Okay, thank you. And last but not least, why is this important and how does it contribute to sustainability? Well, it turns out that Manitoba is a huge producer of canola. In fact, it produced around 3.2 million tons of canola seeds in 2020 alone, from which 30 to 40% of those tons contain protein and could be extracted to produce these films. So, given that the protein content in canola meal is limited in its use for human consumption, it can be used as a main source to produce these biofilms that we're talking about that are not only biodegradable, but it also contributes to this whole concept of circular economy where we repurpose what would be a waste in an industry to serve as a prime source for a new production for the chain production material. Thank you. That was all on my behalf. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Thank you very much, Diana. So with that, we are concluding the first presentation. If we have any questions, I'm happy to ask it from our presenter. So if you have any questions, please type it in the chat box so we will receive the questions. So until we are getting the questions, if I can ask you a question.
Sure.
Why do you decide like oleic acid to be as the one of the material for this like reinforcement?
Oleic acid? Well, it's going to have the oil and water emulsion properties. And what we want to do that is to improve the water barrier of the film. And that's why we're using this oil.
Okay. Does it have anything to do with, let's say, high availability, and it's also from canola oil?
Sure, that too. Now, I was also reading, and in different papers, they used other oils, for example, cinnamon oil, I think, and they used that for antimicrobial properties. So that could also be, another oil that we could use, but due to the high availability of oleic oil, that's also a great option.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so there is a question from Dr. Rotimi Aluko. The question is, if you're using canola proteins, how will they be converted into solid particles for the Pickering emulsions?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's a confusion. No, one thing is the protein, and the other is the Pickering emulsion that will be constructed with nanocellulose crystals. And those will be like the solid particles, and inside that will be the oleic acid. But it's two separate things, and then we mix them together.
Thank you, Diana. I hope that clarified the question from Dr. Aluko. So let's wait a couple more minutes because we have like 3 more minutes. until the next presentation, so we can have a couple more questions from the audience. Okay, I don't see anything yet. Okay, so we do have another question from Dr. Phyllis Coxell. So what is the difference between a regular emulsion and a pickling emulsion?
Thank you for that question. Regular emulsion has a surfactant that acts like an intermediate between the two different phases. And the Pickering emulsion has a solid particle that does that job. And the reason why we chose the Pickering emulsion is that that precise solid composition is better to avoid coalescence, which is where the different emulsions come together, and then it's not an emulsion with small particles within a liquid, but rather the phase separation. So that's why for this particular project, I chose the Pickering emulsion, where the solid particles function as a barrier.
Thank you, Diana. We can have time for one more question if there is any. If not, we can move into the next presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Diana, for presentation, and this is great. So thank you. So with that, we are going to move into the second presentation of our session. So we will have Roshema Mel, who's a master's student at the Department of Food and Human Nutritional Science, and she will be presenting on determining the impact of genotype and environment on oat protein structural characteristic and functionality. Roshema, you can share the presentation.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Bandara, for the introduction. So I'm doing my master's under the supervision of Dr. Manika Malaguda, and my research is based on oat protein. So you might not know why oat protein is important. Oat contain about 15 to 20% protein, which is digestible, readily digestible, and it's comparable with soy protein isolate. And it's not only the content that matters, and also its quality also matters. Talking about the functional properties, oat protein's functional properties are comparable with that of soy protein. And also talking about the global context, Canada is the second largest producer and the largest global exporter of oat as whole oat, and 90% of that oat is produced in Canadian prairies. So my research question is to determining how the genotype and the environment impact on oat protein structural and functional properties. So there are two major objectives to my research. First is to evaluate the structural and functional properties of oat isolate from 3 genotypes and 3 locations across Canada, and then to evaluate the impact of genotype by interaction on oat protein structure and functionality. And this is my methodology. There are 2 major phases, which is I'm studying about the structural and functional properties of oat protein isolate. So in structural properties, I study about the protein profile with SDS page and surface hydrophobicity, denaturation characteristics, secondary structure by FDIR. And in terms of functional properties, I study about solubility, forming, gelling, and emulsification properties of oat proteins. Let's move on to my results. So this is the results that I have taken so far. So this indicates the structural properties of oat protein that I have gathered. So as you can see here, the surface hydrophobicity differences across different locations in Canada and Alberta. The samples from Alberta had the highest surface hydrophobicity. And when talking about the denaturation characteristics, as you can see here in this thermograms, the denaturation temperature was more or less the same across the locations and all 3 cultivars. So in this, you can see the SDS page of the reduced gel the reduce means that I have used mercaptolithanol to reduce the peptides into smaller fractions. So oat protein contain about 80% 12S globulins. So here you can see the intense bands of 12 alpha 12S globulin and beta 12S globulin fraction. So this is the results of the functional properties of oat protein that I have done so far. So forming and emulsion capacity and stability was measured. So interestingly, we could see there is a correlation or an interaction between the surface hydrophobicity, that is structural properties of oat protein, and the surface active properties like forming and emulsion capacities of oat proteins from the samples from Alberta. But why we need to study the structure and function when it comes to applications of oat protein in industry? Why it is so important? Because the oat protein structure is greatly affected by both genotype and the environment on which oat is grown. So this oat protein structure greatly affects the functional properties that particular oat protein can possess. And it is very much important to the applications of oat protein in industry. So as for an example, talking about an emulsifier, oat protein as a surface active agent, we have to maintain the product consistency throughout so many years. So that is why it is needed. It is very important to study how environment and the genotype affects the structure and function. So these are some of the benefits of oat protein. It is very healthy. And talking about its allergenicity, it is less allergenic than that of soy protein and wheat gluten. And also it is environmentally friendly because we need less water and fertilizer input than that of rye and barley. And this is the last thing that is the most important from the economic benefits, because now you know Canada is the largest exporter of bulk oats, but how about what is the possibility to export value-added products like oat protein isolates and concentrates rather than just exporting bulk oats? That is a question to think of. Thank you for listening.
And I would like to apologize to the audience, like with the virtual platform, sometimes those technical glitches would happen. So there was a little bit of instability in the presentation because of poor internet connection. Sorry about that. With that, we can move on to the question session for Roshema. Similar to the previous present, I'll wait for the audience to ask questions, and we will have around 4 minutes for the question time with Roshema as well. Type in the Roshema. So you showed that the samples from Alberta have like better, like improved hydrophobicity and then like better functional properties, right? So why do you think that particular oat samples from Alberta have a higher hydrophobicity? Like what could be the essential reason? Like is it the soil conditions or the nutritional profile they have? What could be the reason for that?
Yes, that is a good question. But the thing is, I haven't studied a lot why the structure has been changed, because we are doing FTIR soon to study why, if there is a significant changes in beta sheets or alpha helix percentage that affects these functional properties. We actually haven't studied it yet.
Okay.
But
okay.
It's a good question, I know.
Okay, thank you very much. And there is one question from the audience, again from Dr. Phyllis Coxell. So given all the health benefits, where can we buy oat proteins? For example, if you go to Superstore Safeway, would we be able to purchase some to cook with? The question clear to you, Roshima?
Sorry, I think there was a internet interruption. Can you repeat the question?
So given all the health benefits, where can we buy oat proteins? Not the oats, oat proteins. For example, if we go to Superstore or Safeway, would we be able to purchase some of the oat proteins to cook with it?
That's a good question. The thing is, in Canada, to my knowledge, I haven't seen oat protein concentrates or oat protein isolate powders as per se to find in grocery stores. But in Canada, it's not available, I think. But in European countries, especially there is a big Swedish and two Finnish companies that produce oat proteins, Landmannen and Fazer. They have these protein isolates and concentrates as protein ingredients that are available to the retail consumers. But in Canada, I couldn't find anything actually.
Okay, thank you very much, Roshima.
Yeah.
And while someone else what Dr. Coxell asked, so do you know any like commercial producer, maybe not for the retail selling, but producing oat protein for, let's say, commercial ingredient application?
In Canada, you mean, or the
Canada or US, like someone who's producing oat protein as a food ingredient?
Okay, not in Canada or US, but I know there is one Finnish and Swedish company, Landmannen and Fazer. I think I have mentioned the company name in my presentation too, if I can share it again.
Were you aware that the Ingredient Incorporated, which is a company in US, if I remember correctly, they may have tried to commercialize oat protein some time ago. I don't know the exact status of that one, but I know Ingredient is working on some of the commercialization of oat protein. But to be honest, like I don't know the exact status of that one. Maybe like check that one, because that's one of the area that they're working on a couple of years ago when I met the scientist. So
yeah, that's good to know. I know the European companies, they are really like interesting about, because they were only doing this oat milk and different products, but not specifically protein ingredients that could be available in the market shelves.
Okay, thank you, Roshima. So with that, we will move on to the next presentation. So our next presenter is Junya Lee. She's also a master's student at the University of Manitoba Department of Food and Human Nutritional Science. And she's going to present her presentation based on the prediction of crude protein and amino microscopy. Junya, so you can share the presentation and start when you're ready.
Thank you, Dr. Bandara. Sorry. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to have you here to attend the section. My name is Junya Liu, a graduate student from University of Manitoba. The research I'd like to discuss today is investigation and the application of seed protein and amino acid compositions prediction with near-infrared reflectance spectroscopy in canola breeding. Canola is economically significant to the Canadian agriculture industry. To facilitate diversification and add value to the canola industry, researchers are emphasized on capitalizing canola meal, the byproduct of canola oil crushing process, as a sustainable protein ingredient for animal feed and human consumption. Protein contents and amino acid compositions are critical criteria to evaluate the protein quality of canola meal for further development and utilization. Canola breeders are continuously committing to improve canola protein quality through various breeding programs. To access multiple quality trials of a vast number of canola seed samples within a limited time frame is still a challenge in a practical breeding program. Hence, near-infrared reflectance spectroscopy has been proposed to rapidly predict the seed quality in canola breeding programs. To date, NIR has not been routinely used for assisting canola breeding efforts in relation to protein quality. Therefore, the objective of the study is to examine the potential of near-infrared reflectance spectroscopy to obtain accurate and robust calibration for amino acid composition within the canola seed samples and help with the canola breeding program. To construct and validate the calibration model, firstly, the canola seeds are scanned by the near-infrared reflectance instrument named the PerkinElmer DA7250 to get the spectra. Then the samples are forwarded to the traditional white chemistry analysis to obtain the reference value of amino acid composition and protein content. In the end, we use the unscrambler software, pre-treated the near-infrared spectra and minimize the noise of the spectra, then combine the results from the reference method to construct and validate the calibration model for amino acid composition and the crude protein content within the canola seeds. This sum table in the left side shows the statistics of the calibration models based on 400 seed samples with PerkinElmer DA7250 on the white basis for some critical amino acid composition, while the figure on the right side compares the predictability of the models on the meal basis and the seed basis for the whole amino acid profile in canola. Result indicates that the calibration models of crude protein and most amino acid except for tryptophan, histidine, sulfur amino acids shows an acceptable coefficient of determination. We also find that near-infrared calibration models has higher predictability on meal samples than seed samples, especially when we look at the external validation result, since the pretreatment makes the samples more uniform and enhance the correlation between the spectral data and reference result. This study indicates that near-infrared reflectance spectroscopy could rapidly predict the crude protein and amino acid compositions of canola seed samples with accessible precision. There is a great potential to integrate near-infrared technology into a breeding program for further improving canola protein quality. Manitoba is one of Canada's most important canola producers. Introducing the near-infrared calibration model overcomes the limitation of traditional amino acid analysis, which is time and chemical consuming. It provides a platform that helps with access to protein quality efficiently to assist Manitoba breeder in a genetic improvement of protein quality in canola seeds. This technology also facilitates canola to access multiple parameters within limited time frame, benefits farmers and food processors with more possibilities of canola meal capitalization. Thank you so much for this presentation. Wondering if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Junya. Similar to our previous presentation, so we will have around 5 minutes for the question session with Junya. So until questions coming in, I'll have one question for you. So when you do the calibration, let's say like canola, depending on the growing region or something, like have slight variation in the amino acid content. So how accurate those validation models would be for those like tiny variations in the amino acid composition and other like changes that they have based on the growing region?
Sorry, Dr. Bernard, you are asking how we do the validation of the, yes. So basically we did two kind of validation. One of them is cross validation, that is come with the partial least square regression. It validated in the calibration set itself. Also, we did the external S validation as well. That is, we select several samples aside from the calibration set. We predict that with our calibration models, and we also did the result from the traditional red chemistry analysis, compared those different those two kind of results and did the R-square. That's how we do the validations on those calibrations models.
Thank you. And we do have a question from the audience. The first question is, why do you think the coefficient determination values are lower for the whole seeds when compared to meals? What makes a canola meal more homogeneous when compared to the whole seeds?
Thank you, Dr. Bernera. I think the first question from Dr. Phyllis is why coefficient determination values are lower than for the whole seed when compared with meals. Yes, Dr. Phyllis, actually, we have two different set of the validation results. For the cross-validation, we did for the calibration within the calibration set itself, is the result is similar, but the for the external validation is quite same. That means because we did a lot of the pre-treatment like preconditioning, succinate lipid extraction. This cause a lot of difference on the chemical compositions on the whole seed conversations, but the wet chemistry values are based on the meal samples. When we set up the calibration, the correlation between the meal samples are stronger than the whole seed. I think those pre-treatments cause a lot of influence on the correlations.
Thank you. And there is another question from Dr. House. Your model seems to predict amino acid content in meal with greater precision. Do you think there is a way to improve the fit for whole canola seeds, or should the focus be placed on meal determination? I believe the amino acid determination in the canola meal.
Thank you, Dr. Bernera. Thank you, Dr. House. I think that those two different side of calibration model can be used in different purpose. The models for the whole seed samples can use for facilitate the breeding program. Definitely, we need to improve it to become a more robust calibration model. But the canola meal calibration model can use for access the quality for the animal feeding directly, but for the meal, but for the seed models, it definitely works for the breeding selection. The meal has higher, more use for like a feeding selection.
Okay, thank you very much, Junia. So with that, the time for your presentation is going to end, and we will move to the next presentation. Unfortunately, our next presenter, Louis Cadavit, he's not present in this session. So we will move into the presentation after that one. So our next presenter is going to be Nugent Goi, who is a master's student in University of Manitoba Department of Food and Human Nutritional Science. So she's going to present on in vitro method for determination of amino acid digestibility and protein quality. Nugent, so please share the presentation and you can start.
Yes, I just shared my screen. Can everyone see that now?
Yes, we can. Just put it on the presenter mode so it will be good.
Yes, so I will start my presentation now. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my presentation, Potential of In Vitro Digestion in Determination of Protein Digestibility and Quality. First of all, my name is Wing, and I'm a food science master student in University of Manitoba. And let's move to the contents of my presentation. And currently, there are 7.9 billion people in the world right now. Yet the United Nations predict that we will continue growing, and in 2100, there will be 11 billion people in the world. And the growing population will put a lot of pressure on socio-economic and environmental perspective. And one of the major challenges that we will face is the agriculture and food system have to be practiced sustainably in order to feed the growing population in a limited resources. So what can we do? Option one, we use Thanos' idea. However, I don't have the infinity stone and I don't like his philosophy, so we can cross this out. Second option, I will do what I can do as a food science student. That is the circle from observation, question, hypothesis, prediction, experiment, and result, or in many cases, go back to more question again. So one of the part that I'm interested in is increasing demand for food protein. And one of the solutions that we can do right now is introduce alternative protein sources that have low cost and also have low ecological footprint to the market. But to bring this to the consumer, they have to be studied, developed, and tested. And that means if we can accelerate and make this step more efficient, we can have solving the problem of food protein. And these three steps have one thing in common, that they are use the digestion model to study the breaking down and also the absorption of nutrients. Traditionally, we can use in vivo model like swine, chicken, or rat. However, scientists are recognizing their limitation, like the ethical issue. They technical requirements were really high, expensive, require long time, and have different biological needs comparing to human. So we are paying more attention to the in vitro model. Those are the systems that can mimicking the physical biological condition of GI tract and can be categorized as static or dynamic based on the design. And what we are currently doing in our lab right now is study on the static infogest digestion model. They can simulate the digestions of the oral, gastric, and intestinal phase for human. And these are the standardized protocol with international consensus. Enzyme before using or after a long time of storage will be testing their activity again to ensure the consistency. And the InfoChest can simulate for various target digestions. And for example, for adult, they would take around 5 hours of digestion. So we focus on the examining the potential of InfoJest to measure in vitro protein digestibility, amino acid digestibility, and protein quality. So what we're gonna do it? So we are using a variety of samples from cereal, pulse, legume, animal, and protein concentrate, applied with or without heat and at various particle size. We will digest them with the InfoJest and using the digesta to study the protein digestibility and amino acid digestibility. And combined with the initial amino acid profile, we can calculate protein quality, various actually, because in North American right now, we are currently using the protein digestibility corrected amino acid score or short APDCAS, while FAO is recommend another value called the digestible indispensable amino acid score, HDIAS, for a replacement for PDCAS. So what our study will contribute to the development for Canadian protein ecosystem. First of all, we will provide data for potential non-animal solution for food testing. Do you know that in 2020, there are more than 5 million of animals being used for scientific purpose only? And including that for food-related product, there are more than 140,000 animals. And even though we don't have a specific cost related to that, on the website of Humanized Society International, they compare a variety of chemical toxicity, and in vitro tests can reduce 22 to 97% of cost comparing to testing on animal. And also in terms of time, in vitro, InfoJest only take around 7 days. That's including the test for the enzyme before digestion and preliminary run. While for the official PDCAS methods, it would take like double the time of that. So these are the information that I mentioned today. And I hope for my short presentation, you will know more about our ongoing study project and also the potential of in vitro digestion that will contribute to Canadian protein ecosystem. This is my reference list. And if you have any question, please let me know, or you can reach me by this email or come to talk at the Digestion Center. So that's all my presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. So with that, we can move on to the question session. So we will expect a couple of questions from the audience, but until those are typed in, I have a basic question for you. I know you
Yes.
have access to another like digestion system, TIM digestion system, right? So
Yes.
why did you decide to go with the InfoGest instead of TIM? So is there any specific reason for that?
Yes, so currently we also have access to TIM1 in Richardson Center right now, and it's a really great dynamic model. As I mentioned, there will be static model and dynamic model. Dynamic model allow us to have the movement, so like really realistically stimulate the digestion in human body. However, they also really complicated, more expensive, and take a lot of time. So as far as I know, it's gonna take me roughly 9 hours for digestion for just one sample in TIM. However, for InfoGest, it just take me 5 hours, and I will try to maximize my time efficiency by simultaneously like rolling up digestion multiple sample at one time. So it will allow me to study more. However, when I have my full data, then I can have a really like the number of R squared represent the regressions of the relationship between in vivo and in vitro. Then we can decide if we will do more with TIM1 or not.
Okay, so for some reason, I got a message saying that the chat box is disabled. So if Luis can fix that one to ask questions, we will do that one. But until then, maybe I can have a follow-up question related to that until we fix that issue. So for some reason, unfortunately, the chat box is disabled for you for your presentation. So Luis will try to fix that one. So when we compare the like TIM and the other one, just try to see like when you compare the two different methods, do you think the dynamic model is more accurate or the static model is more accurate?
I think in the end, we were looking for what kind of model have the closest regression R square value to the in vivo data that we obtain from either swine or human. So that would be the best. Because sometimes, even though that is a complex model, the R square can be slow. And one of the PhD students in my group right now, he's studying pH drop, another digestion model, and that's only take 10 minutes to study the digestion for one model. So that even way shorter than comparing to my 5-hour model or TIM1 9-hour model. And he obtained like really good R square too. So after we have the R square, then we can compare everything together.
Okay, and there is a question from Dr. Aliko. How does the PD-Cas differ from DIAS, like the two different methods?
Oh yes, thank you for your question, Dr. Aliko. So as I mentioned, North American is using PD-Cas right now, and that allows us to compare the amino acid score, that means the amino acid profile of the food, with the need that we have from human body. And it's great. However, they have certain limitation is whenever they have the truncation. That means when the protein quality is too high, like more than 1, the scientific say that then we don't need that because it's over our needs. So they truncate at the limit of 1. With DIAS, we have an updated amino reference list for amino acids for human body, so we can compare that. And also we allow that there will be protein that have higher than 1 value. So if you remember one of the opening presentation before, if we can combine different protein, plant-based protein, so that we can like have a effect that will boost the protein quality for everything. So that is one of those things that different from PD-Cas to DIAS.
Thank you, Junia. With the interest of the time, we will have to move on to the next presenter. So if the audience have any other questions, please feel free to email Junia, Nushan, so she can answer the question. My apologies, I mispronounced your name.
Yes, thank you for your time.
So our next presenter is Marika Marika Boyan. She's a master's student at the Natural Resource Institute at the University of Manitoba. She's going to present about the exploring the potential of upcycling craft brewers spent grain in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Marika, you can share the presentation and start.
Okay. Hello, my name is Marika Boryan, and as a person who has lived in many cities and traveled the world, I've seen the possibilities for living more sustainably on this planet with a population now approaching 8 billion. So building on my degree in food science and my work experience in the food industry, I'm now taking my master's in natural resources and environmental management to think about the sustainability of food systems through the lens of circular economy and food upcycling. So with global initiatives such as the Paris Agreement and planetary boundaries as guiding principles, my research thinks global to act local. I've partnered with Barnhammer Brewing on a research project that explores the potential of upcycling brewer spent grain in Winnipeg. So food upcycling is using ingredients that otherwise would not have gone to human consumption. They are procured and produced using verifiable food chains and have a positive impact on the environment. So to assess this potential, the first objective is to define and quantify the current waste management strategies for spent grain. The second is to understand the opportunities and barriers to upcycling, which includes identifying local products that can incorporate upcycled spent grain, specifically focusing on plant protein products. And the third objective is to recommend potential upcycling options in the form of a framework. So to achieve my objectives, I first want to know what's being done successfully in Canada. So I'll be starting with a website review of the 1,210 Canadian craft brewers, the websites, to assess mentions of spent grain upcycling. Second, to deepen my understanding, I'll be conducting a Canada-wide survey to determine the number of Canadian craft breweries currently upcycling, how they upcycle, and what products they upcycle to. And with this knowledge, I'll get more specific in Winnipeg. All 18 craft breweries will be invited to interview to expand on survey data and map out the local situation. All food companies, processors, and manufacturers that operate in Manitoba producing foods that have a potential for upcycled spent grain will be identified and invited to interview as well. So we're specifically focusing on plant protein products as the current food guide recommends eating more plant-based proteins. And with this data, an upcycling framework will be developed specifically for Winnipeg and will be presented at a focus group made up of all the interviewed brewers and food processors to receive real industry feedback. So in this case, So a linear economy is the worst case scenario for sustainability. And what's commonly done among craft breweries is a more circular economy with spent grain going to cattle feed or compost. So while these intentions are good, spent grain is extremely nutritious with up to 30% protein and high fiber and has a much higher value than this. So while my research isn't complete, what's emerging in literature and practice is this concept of food upcycling, where spent grain becomes a valuable human food ingredient and can be incorporated into a variety of products without compromising taste and texture. So simply put, this practice takes one process's output and makes it a high value input for another product. So we've seen that the most common uses are bakery products where spent grain is incorporated best at 10% of a flour mixture. So this has been tried with breads, biscuits, cookies, muffins, cakes, waffles, pancakes, tortillas, snacks, donuts, and even brownies. So spent grain can increase the protein, fiber, and individual amino acid contents while decreasing the overall calories of a food product. So there's even a creative use in the US is a company called Take Two that makes barley milk from spent grain. And it's even been studied at up to 5% in beef frankfurters, which results in increased fiber and decreased fat while maintaining positive acceptance scores. So Manitoba manufactures many different food products that have been proven to successfully incorporate spent grain. So there's a lot of potential for closing the loop right here in Manitoba, as we've seen done in other Canadian cities. So while we think global and act local, upcycling spent grain has many benefits for Manitoba. So the primary benefit is that valuable, consumable, and healthy high-protein products will not be filling a landfill instead of my stomach, which links to Sustainable Protein Goals 3 and 14 for minimizing waste in general and in distribution. And saving spent grain and using it as an ingredient in other foods means that agricultural production demands for those products decrease, supply chains shorten and stay local, and Manitoba takes another step towards sustainability. So this contributes to goals 2, 4, 13, 17, and 19. So not to mention that the brewing industry becomes a stronger leader of a circular economy. So by realizing the true value of ingredients conventionally seen as waste products, the overall demand on large-scale agriculture can be reduced, in turn decreasing associated greenhouse gas emissions, as in Goal 2, halt agricultural land expansion supposedly needed to feed a growing population, and overall just leaving more room for nature to thrive. So our project is about to hit high gear, so I'm expecting to have some exciting results for next year. But if your food company has potential use for upcycled spent grain in any form and you're interested in participating, please contact me. Thank you so much for listening. And are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Marika. With the interest of time, we may have a time for like one question, and for any additional questions, you can always reach her through her email. So I'll wait for the question from the audience. And this is, until that, I just have a question out of the curiosity. Do you know how many like craft breweries in Manitoba? Because this is something that I was trying to find out as well.
Yeah, when I started the background research, there's 18. And in the past month, I saw 1 or 2 new names. And then there's Farmery that's outside of Winnipeg. There's one in Brandon, and I think there was one more outside of Winnipeg. But just in terms of trying to keep supply chains short, right now we're trying to concentrate just within the perimeter.
Oh, okay. Because I read from somewhere that like Manitoba has the lowest per capita craft breweries compared to the other provinces in Canada. So that's why I was wondering like how many we have within the like province of Manitoba. Okay, so there is one question, we can go with that one. Do you see a development of a centralized facility to process pen brewers grain, or will connections be made individually, business to business model? The question is from Dr. House.
Hi, yeah, thank you for the question. Within the research, in terms of trying to develop the best framework, we have to be realistic in terms of supply and financials. And then we're also like, obviously the main goal is also to keep greenhouse gas emissions lower and like the whole supply chain more sustainable. So we'll be looking at trying to develop sort of a co-op where all the businesses come together and create their own framework, or outsourcing, say, the drying and milling to existing companies. So that'll be part of the research, but we are going to look at both options just to see what is most feasible. So right now, I'm not 100% sure which one will work best.
Thank you, Marika. So with the interest of the time, we will have to move into the next presenter. So our next presenter is Untitled, and she's a master's student at the Department of Food and Human Nutritional Science at the University of Manitoba as well. So she will be presenting on canola protein chitosan blends as a novel food packaging material. And you can start sharing the presentation and go ahead with the presentation. And you're muted, so.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Anty Dang. I'm a master's student in Dr. Nandika's lab. So I came from Vietnam to Canada in the end of 2015 to do my undergraduate at the University of Manitoba. In 2021, I graduated with a Bachelor in Food Science and a minor in microbiology. During my undergrad study, I participated in the cooperative program, which has led me to some very interesting job placement. Like one summer, I get to work as the summer research assistant, and I get to work on the field with a few different farm equipment, which is very interesting for a city kid like me. In 2022, I decided to pursue a master in food science. So my project is about biopolymer food packaging. To be more specific, I'm working on using canola's protein and chitosan blend as a new food packaging material. The issue that my study is trying to address is the overuse of petroleum-based synthetic plastic in our modern world. We know that this kind of material can take a very long time to be broken down, anywhere from a few years to a few hundred of years. And therefore, we want to make new food packaging materials from biopolymers, such as protein, carbohydrates, and lipids. These materials are highly abundant. They're also highly biodegradable and are available at low cost. So in my project, I will be using a blend of a protein and a carbohydrate. So my food packaging film will be made from canola's protein isolate and chitosan. It is fabricated with nanocrystalline cellulose that is previously modified with oleic acid through the process of sonication. And the film will be made through the solvent casting method. We add nanocrystalline materials to the material to increase the mechanical, thermal, and barrier properties of the film. And we add oleic acid to increase the hydrophobicity of the film because chitosan, protein, and nanocrystalline cellulose are attracts water. So I will be looking at the morphology of the film with several functional properties, such as the thermal, mechanical, water barrier, and microbial properties. We do keep in mind that our thermal, mechanical, and water barrier properties of our film are still lower than that of the petroleum-based synthetic plastics. However, our objective is in the end to be able to create a flexible and durable materials that can also extend the product's shelf life. And finally, we also wish to utilize more of canola's protein because, as we all know, canola protein, although it contains similar amino acid profile to that of soy or pea protein, it is not ideal to be used in food products because it contains some anti-nutrients. Therefore, we are trying to find a new way to better utilize this protein. So on a larger scale, by exploiting canola protein and underutilized products, we are hoping to add more value to the waste management process, which consists of 3 R's, recycle, reduce, and reuse. And although there are a lot of factors to consider, we hope that in the end, our material will be able to use to manufacture single-use grocery bag to replace the bags that are conventionally made from conventional plastics. And also overall, we hope that our project can contribute to the sustainable development goals that is set forth by the World Health Organization. Thank you very much for listening. I'm happy to take any questions from the audience.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So with that, we can move on to the question session. So I'll, as usual, wait for a couple of minutes in the chat box for any questions to rise. And until then, I'll have one question for you. So why did you decide to blend it with chitosan specifically? Like, what's the main advantage of using chitosan?
So there are 3 criteria why I selected chitosan. First of all, it is highly abundant. Also, it in combined with protein can help to increase the mechanical properties of film. It also has good adhesivity, which is good for making foams, and also it has very good antimicrobial properties.
Okay, So, like, does the chitosan have a better mechanical properties compared to canola protein, or?
No, compared to protein, still have better mechanical properties, but I think that by blending protein and a polysaccharide, it can further enhance the effect.
Okay, thank you. So I'll wait to see whether there was any question from the audience. It takes a couple of seconds typically to get the questions in, so that's why we have to keep the conversation going on. So in terms of single-use plastic, like, what is the biggest challenge you would see in terms of bringing it from the bench to the actual commercial scale? So what are the main challenges you would see?
So right now, this is just on a lab scale. So we're producing it using solvent casting method, which is not good for industrial application. And usually in industrial settings, they use blown film extrusion or any kind of extrusion method. So that's one of the things that we have to consider if we want to scale up this studies.
Okay. It looks like we do not have any question from the audience. So I'll just give another 30 seconds before I move on to the next presentation to see whether we will get anything. Or it could be simply because there is a technical glitch as well, so people cannot pose the question like with the previous presenter. But anyway, since the time is almost up, we can move on to the next presentation. And thank you very much, John. So we can move on to the next presentation. Thank you. Okay, so with that, the presenter that we had missing before, Louis Cadavit, I saw he's in this session right now. Louis. Okay, so our next presenter.
I will, sorry, Nandika, I was just make one, but he was joined to different sessions, so I'm gonna do it again.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
I'm gonna try to make him again to panelist.
Okay, please bear with us. Like, one of the presenter have a technical issue, so we are trying to bring him back to this session and then make him a presenter. So bear with us for 1 minute, and then we will move on to the next presentation.
Okay, he should have joined.
Yeah, he did join, but I can't still see his image or I can't hear him. Please bear with us for like 1 more minute. So we'll figure this one out and bring the last presenter as well.
Luis, can you please see if you can talk?
Okay, he said he cannot. So maybe.
Yeah, it's just it's like a 2 different users in there. I'm gonna do it again. Okay, let's see.
Thank you very much, Luis. And until our Luis from Manitoba figures out the technical issue, I just want to remind the 2 things that I mentioned earlier as well. So number 1, we will start the voting for Best People's Choice Presenter Award right after this last presentation. So you will have 5 minutes to vote for the best presenter you think should get the People's Choice Award. So the link on the Luis will post the link in the chat box, so you can use that one to cast your vote. And the other thing is there will be a award for the best scientific merit as well from all the presenters, but that will be announced later. Okay, so let's see.
Luis, can you try again to unmute yourself?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Give me 1 second to be able to share that.
Again, we do apologize for the technical issues and the delays. Perfect. We can see your presentation. So if you can put it on the presenter mode, that would be perfect. Then I'll do the introduction.
Hi, thank you. My name is Louis David. I am a multidisciplinary executive with experience in the agricultural and commodities industries in Latin America. I'm also president of the Center for the Advancement of Sustainable Agriculture in Ecuador and an avid promoter of sustainable cryptocurrencies. I do have a degree in management from Imperial College, and I'm currently doing my master's degree in sustainability at UBC. My current study is a comparative LCA of the Canadian egg industry supply managed model and a theoretical free market model based within the Canadian boundaries. The boundaries of the project stretch from the cradle to the provincial distribution centers, both in the theoretical free model and the current supply managed model, which would be the closest distribution center provincially. The objective of the study is to compare and understand the environmental effects of the egg production with both models. The methodology, well, it's a comparative life cycle assessment, which will have three models: the current Canadian supply managed model, an Alberta-based free market model, an Ontario-based free market model. Give me a second, I'm having issues with the presentation. My apologies. Oh, there we go. It will also have a literature review on food security and food sovereignty that will be performed as part of the study, which should help add a further dimension to the study to understand the implications of this aspects within LCA that doesn't really touch upon it on a regular basis. Given that the study is ongoing, the estimated results is that the regionalized model might have a higher transportation impact due to the long distances in Canada, given that it will have to be going from Calgary and Ontario to the rest of the nation. It is also estimated that the regional model will have adverse effects in terms of food sovereignty, as provinces would lose control of their egg supply and would solely depend on what happens in either of the provincial centers for production. The feed composition, both in Alberta and Ontario, would also change, given that Alberta is wheat-based and Ontario would be corn-based, meaning that there might be higher effects in terms of emissions from the perspective of the feed. In terms of food security, the regional models should be less safe and should be adverse, given that there might be supply chain issues, major weather events, and other such aspects that might affect the distribution, such as what happened in British Columbia late last year with the rains, which might affect transportation arriving, which means they could run out of eggs because of such conditions. The benefits of eggs to the ecosystems are that egg is the most sustainable protein in Canada, is affordable, it's nutrient rich. Furthermore, the study would be the base for future add-on studies, which could look into economic effects, and it will also give a better understanding of the environmental impact of the current model in Canada, or the theoretical model that we're looking into. And if you guys have any questions, I'm here to ask anything.
Thank you very much, Lois. So with that, we can move on to the questions. So as usual, I'll wait in the chat box to see whether there was any questions from the audience. Until then, like, because this is something that I'm not very familiar with. So like, what is the main advantage or the viewpoint that you can bring in from the life cycle assessment? So how can we use it to improve the protein ecosystem?
One of the main things that in Canada has been happening is that the supply managed model has been under attack from different proponents of a free market methodology. And in this case, the supply managed model and LCA could demonstrate that perhaps the current model is more sustainable for the environment in terms of production and distribution. And that is one of the things we're trying to look into to see if a theoretical free market model based in Canada is more efficient or if it's adverse to the environment.
Okay, thank you. And I'm still waiting to see whether there will be any questions from the audience. Okay, I don't see any. If the audience have any questions, please type it in the chat box. So that would be a great help for us to move on with the question period. Okay, so I do not see any questions yet. Because of that, we can conclude this session. And before concluding, please keep in mind that we are going to open the voting for the People's Choice Award in a couple more minutes. So please stay with us for 5 more minutes. Once Louis from the Manitoba Agriculture, once he posts the link for People's Choice Award voting, you can log in and then go with the voting for your best presenter that you like. So please help us to select the best presenter as you feel who should get the People's Choice Award. So Louis already posted that poll. So please go ahead and cast your vote. While you are doing the voting, I want to thank you all the attendees who attended the first breakout session of the second Manitoba Sustainable Protein Research Symposium. Today we had the opportunity to learn from our trainees about the research they do, what kind of a question they're trying to address, and how that will impact the Manitoba Sustainable Protein Research Strategy and the protein ecosystem in Manitoba, as well as in Canada. So with that, I want to thank all the presenters as well as the attendees for your time and the effort you put towards making this session a success. So we still have like 5 more minutes of voting. So please go ahead and cast your vote based on who do you think should get the People's Choice Award from this particular session. And after the voting, please stay tuned for tomorrow as well. There will be another couple of breakout sessions with some of the great presentation from our trainees. So please stay in touch with tomorrow with the breakout presentation as well. With that, I would like to conclude the session and again remind you to cast your vote for best presentation as you see fit. Thank you.